Assalamualaikum to Dr. and everyone. Today, we from Group 4 will present about the new economic policy in Malaysia 1971. Let me introduce our group members. First is NURAIN AZIRA binti MOKHTAR. Second is NURSYAIDATUL AZIRA binti YAZID. Third is RILDHIATUL AISYA binti NIZAM. Fourth is NURSYAIMIMIE binti HASRUL. And lastly is SITI NADHIRAH binti AMIN. Let me give the introduction of the new economic policy in 1971. In colonial Malaysia, the British Empire controlled the economy of the nation employing a divide and rule policy. The British encouraged immigration and Chinese and Indian immigrants migrate to the nation to become involved in mining and plantation industries, while their native Malay counterparts remained with cultivation, further increasing the ethnic divide. After the independence, the economy of Malaysia continued to be dominated by rubber and tin, with the British of the non-Malay people in control of them. The native Malays were largely excluded from the economic development, relying on subsistence agriculture, and hence many economic disparities existed between the ethnic groups. The racial riots of 1969, the May 13 incidents, revealed the overall dissatisfaction of the Malays and further worsened the situation. Given that the Chinese controlled the majority of the nation's wealth, native Malays were cut out of the economic opportunities in their own lane. As a result, the racial incident, the new economic policy was introduced in 1971 by encouraging the equal wealth distribution. The NEP aims to reduce the economic gaps between Bumiputra and non-Bumiputra populations. The NEP aimed at addressing poverty and economic inequality between races, with focus on providing preferred opportunities for Bumiputra. Their target policy was created to address inequality generated by colonial economic planning and encourage national unity by providing Malays with equal economic rights. Today, I'm going to briefly explain the policy problem that led to the creation of Malaysia's new economic policy, NEP, which was implemented from 1971 to 1986. The NEP was introduced as a direct response to the severe ethnic and economic inequalities that became especially clear after the racial riots of 1969. These issues were rooted in the Malaysian colonial past and post-independence development patterns. Before the NEP, poverty was widespread among the rural Bumiputra communities, which mainly Malays and indigenous groups who depended on the traditional agriculture and had a limited infrastructure, education, and also income. There was also a major economic imbalance between ethnic groups. The Chinese dominated the business and the industry, while Malays were mostly engaged in a low-income agricultural work. This created a deep resentment and a sense of exclusion among the Malays, contributing to social unrest and national disunity. Another key problem was limited to access to the education and also job opportunities for the Bumiputra. The education system, shaped by the British colonial policies, favored urban, English-speaking communities. Rural Malays were left behind with the underfunded schools and fewer chances to succeed. All of these challenge, high poverty, economic disparity, and unequal access to the education, it led to the launch of the NEP, which aimed to reduce poverty and restructure society in order to achieve a greater ethnic balance and unity in Malaysia.
Moving on to the part where I will share on the objectives of the policy and the strategies that has been done through new economic policy from the year of 1971 to 1986. The first objective is to reduce and eradicate poverty regardless of races. The strategy to achieve this objective is through rural development. Since the majority of the poor population during the 1970s live in rural areas, especially the work they do is as farmers and fishermen. The government built rural roads to connect remote villages to towns and expanding access to electricity and clean water. The key initiative was the Federal Land Development Authority, or we know as FELDA. The participants were given land to do crops like oil, palm, and rubber, along with housing. This helps create new sources of income and enhance the living standard. The second initiative is through support to the small medium sized enterprise or SMEs. This with the hand of Majlis Amanah Rakyat, or we know as MARA. MARA supported through financial assistance. They provided loans and facilities to Bumiputra individuals who wanted to start small business. The loan itself had low interest rates and easy repayment terms which helped the community. Besides that, Mara built Mara business premises and Mara shopping complexes or pusat perniagaan Mara across Malaysia. These facilities gave Bumiputra business affordable spaces to rent and operate, especially in urban areas where rental prices were very high. Moving on to the second objective, which is to accelerate the process of restructuring the Malaysian society to correct economic imbalance so as to reduce and eventually eliminate the identification of race with economic function. The first strategy to achieve this objective is through the formation of the Heavy Industries Corporation of Malaysia, or HICOM. The idea was to create anchor industries like automotive like proton, steel, cement and chemicals. These industries were capital intensive and strategically chosen to create jobs. This helps the citizen to more participate in industrial sectors to improve their living standards. Besides that, Malaysia established a free trade zone to attract foreign direct investment, boost industrialization, and create jobs. The Parliament passed the Free Trade Zones Act in 1971. This act allows the government to designate specific areas as free trade zones. For example, Bayan Lepas Free Industrial Zone in Penang, which was established in 1972. It was famous due to its success in attracting multinational corporations like Intel, AMD, and HP. This zone offers special incentives like tax exemptions, reduced tariffs, and simplified licensing for business operations. For the third objective is to increase Bumiputra ownership of equity to at least 30%. The government introduced the quota system, which reserving a significant percentage of university placement for Bumiputra students. So this policy led to an increase in Bumiputra enrollment in higher education institution with their representation rising from 40% in 1970 to 63% by 1985. Besides that, to achieve the objective, the Industrial Coordination Act of 1975 was mandated that manufacturing firms with a paid up capital above 250,000 allocate at least 30% of their equity to Bumiputra investors. This requirement was enforced through the issuance of industrial license, effectively making compliance a condition for business operations.
One of the major strengths of the new economic policy was its ability to reduce the national poverty rate. So as we know, Malaysia is a good example for poverty reduction, especially in Southeast Asia countries, having reduced its poverty rate from 49.3% in 1970 to 17% in 1990 to 3.8% in 2008 and only 1.7% in 2012, which is a decrease of nearly 97%. So as we know, the NEP also help many households improve their income and living standards by working on a range of aim growth initiatives, including land settlement projects, improvement to rural infrastructure, and also job development. So the important benefit was to focus on improving educational access, allowing more people from low income, particularly from Bumiputras, to pursue higher education and advance to their higher paying jobs. While the NEP focused on supporting Bumiputras due to historical economic inequality, many of the programs that were introduced offer wider advantage to Malaysians of other ethnicities. So an increasing number of citizens left poverty and the economic barrier between different groups began to decrease. So another major strength of the new economic policy is by achieving strong economic growth and diversifying its economy. So the new economic policy had a significant contribution toward the economic growth and diversification of Malaysia after being announced in 1971. So before the NEP, the economy of Malaysia is heavily dependent on a few commodities like rubber, tin, and also other than that, educational and training programs were also developed to educate the workforce with the skills required for the new businesses in order to encourage economic growth and development. So the NEP enabled the expansion of the economy and the promotion of new sectors, allowing Malays, Chinese, and also Indians to participate together in formally specialized economy. Although there were obstacles ahead, one of the NEP's most significant benefits was economic diversification, which drove Malaysia toward a more equal and harmonious society. So lastly, another major strength of the new economic policy is Malaysia has achieved major progress in increasing Bumiputra participation in various aspects which align with the objective to increase Bumiputra ownership of equity to at least 30%. So as for the education, Malaysia's new economic policy focuses on increasing Bumiputra participation, which leads to a more balanced economic among races. So during the NEPs, the number of Bumiputra students participating in higher educational and vocational institutions has increased significantly. So the government initiatives such as MARA Scholarship, the establishment of UiTM, which is University Technology MARA, and also a variety of education funds played an important part in transforming the Bumiputra educational environment, providing opportunities for thousands of students, those who shortly after graduation are employed in successful sectors of the economy each year. Malaysia also has achieved ownership and economic engagement as in 2022, Bumiputra ownership in public listed company was 7%, which represents 62 of the 945 companies listed on Bursa Malaysia. This strength show an ongoing dedication to reducing inequality between races as well as moving toward an inclusive economy, which directly supports the NEP's goal of decreasing the relationship between race and economic function in Malaysia.
Next, I will talk about the weaknesses. Although the new economic policy NEP was successful in reducing poverty, especially among the Bumiputra, it had several weaknesses. One major issue was the unequal poverty reduction and economic discrimination against non-Bumiputra groups who were always denied fair access to education, business, and job opportunities. This created exclusion and injustice among other ethnic communities. While the policy aimed to promote national unity, it ended up deepening ethnic division and was seen by many as favoring the Malays too much. As a result, the NEP lacked effectiveness and failed to fully achieve its objectives of equal development for all Malaysians. The second weakness of the new economic policy is the decreasing flow in foreign investment, along with political favoritism and cronyism, which caused significant obstruction to the creation of an equitable and sustainable development. The policy was often used as a means for dispense patronage and also leading to allegations of favoritism and corruption. On the other hand, an exercise in political favoritism has allowed the small elite to benefit from the policy while denying the real targets of the truly disadvantaged. It is done for securing their business favors for instant contracts, government projects, and other forms of business. This practice of cronyism not only distorts resource distribution and reduces economic efficiency, but also weaken public trust and undermine the NEP's objective of inclusive and equitable growth. The last weaknesses is the emergence of cronyism, the Alibaba system, and a dependency syndrome among certain Bumiputras. Instead of having actual entrepreneurial skills, some Bumiputras act as a passive sites for non-Bumiputra businesses, and this behavior is known as Alibaba, that is acquiring a contract without any active participation on it. This creates a reliance on a government support rather than building competitive skills. As Jesudesa said, many Bumiputra companies rely solely on government contracts and struggle in open markets. This policy goes against the NEP's original objectives, leading to inefficiency, ransacking, and political favoritism. Then, lastly, this benefits only a politically connected elite and contributes to inequality within the Bumiputra community, weakening the economy's long-term strength.
Thank you, NADHIRAH, for the explanation or analysis of New Economic Policy, NEP. Now, I will move to the suggestion or recommendation that NEP can make to realign its policy instruments with Malaysia's current economic and social realities. First and foremost, implementing poverty alleviation programs based on need, prioritizing social equity and the reduction of poverty. Since the bulk of poor were Malays, poverty reduction was therefore targeted at them, and poverty reduction was accorded much greater priority than diminishing the income gap between rich and poor. NEP determined disadvantage based on a specific racial group, namely the Bumiputra, mostly Malays, rather than income. As a result, disadvantaged non-Bumiputra are not eligible for NEP benefits. Therefore, the implementation needs-based program would use income levels, asset ownership, and living condition, regardless of race, to determine the eligibility for help. The details can be accessed through records gathered from IKASID. Programs such as food support, housing assistance, and subsidies healthcare and education aid would be targeted to all low-income Malaysians. Moving on to the next recommendation is to improve openness and responsibility in governance. Practicing good governance has significantly increased the quality of the governance system that shows positive progress and effective development throughout public sector services in Malaysia. When policies and decisions are made with transparency and accountability, with ethics, best practices, and a quality governance system, it helps create an environment that is more trustworthy. Poor governance and lack of transparency in decision-making could lead to corruption and abuse of power. Investors will seek countries with stable governance and low risk of corruption because they want to make long-term plans and financial commitments. Moving on to the next recommendation is to improve openness and responsibility in governance. Practicing good governance has significantly increased the quality of the governance system that shows positive progress and effective development throughout public sector services in Malaysia. When policies and decisions are made with transparency and accountability, with ethics, best practices, and a quality governance system, it helps create an environment that is more trustworthy. Poor governance and lack of transparency in decision-making could lead to corruption and abuse of power. Investors will seek countries with stable governance and low risk of corruption because they want to make long-term plans and financial commitments.
Last but not least, one of the major challenges that emerged during the implementation of the NEP was the rise of cronyism, the Alibaba system, and a growing dependency syndrome among some segments of the Bumiputra community. To tackle this issue, it's recommended that Malaysia adopt a merit-based and transparent empowerment framework. This means enforcing a strict transparency in the public procurement, setting up independent oversight bodies to ensure fair access to contract, and redesigning support programs in order to emphasize performance, skill and innovation rather than a passive entitlement.
In response, the government introduced the Bumiputra Economic Community (BEC), a new governance structure that aimed to improve accountability, transparency and also coordination in order to implementing Bumiputra focus initiative. This step helped to ensure the economic empowerment is based on the capability and contribution, not just a background. This reform is critical in order to make sure the policies truly uplift the Bumiputra community while maintaining fairness and the national progress.
To conclude the presentation, we can see that the new economic policy was a major turning point for Malaysia. It brought big changes to society and the economy, laying the foundation for the country's future development. Although it had its flaws, the new economic policy's influence is still felt today as Malaysia continues working towards unity, balance, and shared growth among all races.
Hi, my name is NURAIN and I'm from Group 1. So, can you guys tell me what are the places that FELDA covered in new economic policy in 1971 until 1986? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Shira. So, to answer that question, there are several places that were covered by FELDA. The first one is Felda Lura Bilut in Pahang. It is the first Felda settlement which established in 1958. It continued to grow and receive support during the NEP period. The second one is Felda Jengka Triangle in Pahang. It is one of the largest Felda schemes consisting of 25 settlements, for example, Jengka 1 to Jengka 25. It developed to grow oil palm and rubber. And we have Felda Bukit Rokan, which is in Negeri Sembilan. It was another NEP era scheme that provided housing and farmland to settlers.
Hi, my name is NURSYAIDATUL from Group 2. Today, I want to ask, what were the key socioeconomic issue that the new economic policy, NEP, aimed to address in Malaysia between 1971 and 1986? And how did this issue contribute to ethnic tension in the country?
Economic policy (NEP) was introduced in Malaysia in response to deep-rooted socio-economic disparities that had created significant ethnic tension, mostly notably highlighted by the 1969 racial riots. So, for the key issue included widespread poverty, particularly among the rural Bumiputra, who had limited access to education, infrastructure, and employment opportunities. Economic imbalance were evident between the ethnic group. Malays were largely engaged in low-income agriculture, while Chinese and Indian communities dominated business and industry. For example, in 1970, rural poverty affected 65.9% of Malays compared to 24.6% of Chinese and 31% of Indians. Additionally, the education system favored urban, non-Malay population to its British colonial legacy and urban-based English language instruction. These factors not only limited the socio-economic mobility for the Bumiputra, but also the inter-ethnic inequalities, which lead to the sense of exclusions and national disunity, which the NEP aimed to correct through affirmative action and restructuring the efforts.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Azim. I'm from Group 3. My question is, which economic sectors experience significant improvements as a result of the NEP's implementation?
So the question is, which economic sectors experience significant improvement as a result of the NEP's implementation? So the new economic policy helped develop several important parts of Malaysia's economy. Among the sectors that grew the most were manufacturing, construction, and also services. So the government gave strong support through funding, initiative, and also policies to help these sectors grow. For example, we have manufacturing, that more factories were built and more goods were produced locally, which created jobs and increased exports. So in the other hand, we have construction sector, which the government invested in building roads, schools, hospitals and also houses, especially in rural areas, which improve the infrastructure and living condition of the rural areas. So the services sector, including banking, education and also tourism, also expanded as the economy become more developed. So government-linked companies were also set up or expanded to help lead this development, especially in industry that needed more Bumi Putra involvement, and the NEP played a big role in moving Malaysia from an agricultural-based economy toward a more modern, industrialized.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is MOKHTAR Muhammad. I'm from Group 5. So my question is, how can Malaysia future economic policies ensure that all citizens, regardless of ethnicity, have equal access to education and economic opportunities?
Thank you, Tarek, for the question. So, they can ensure that all citizens, regardless of ethnicity, have equal access to education and economic opportunities, which implements need-based affirmative action where they can replace race-based quotas with criteria based on income, geographic location, and social disadvantage. This will ensure that all underprivileged Malaysians, whether Bumi Putra, Chinese, Indian, or others, receive fair access to education, scholarship, and economic aid. Apart from that, they can also enhance access to quality education nationwide, where they can invest in other under-resourced schools, especially in rural Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, and urban poor areas. Other than that, they also can improve teacher training, infrastructure, and digital access to narrow the education quality gap across regions and communities. Thank you.
Fadilah from Group 6. So my question is, in what way could unintended social behaviors such as the Alibaba system and dependency syndrome under the new economic policy affect future innovation and entrepreneurial culture in Malaysia?
Thank you, Ifa, for the question. So I will answer that these behaviors affect Malaysia's future by making people less interested in working hard or being creative. First, when people rely on political help such as Alibaba system, they will stop trying to come up with their own ideas. Second, it's not fair for the real business owners who work hard but get left behind because of the people that not have any interested in work. Lastly, if many people keep doing like this, they will learn the real skills, and that's make harder for Malaysia to go strong business in the future. So it really holds the country back from moving forward.